Hello everyone, we're going to take a look at Theory B of 4.4 square roots and powers. And I'm going to introduce you to this theory by doing exercise 56. Okay, watch closely. You know that root x squared equals x. Complete. From the rule a to the power of p to the power of q equals a to the power of pq, it follows that x to the power of a half squared equals what? The rule states if I have a power to a power, I multiply the exponents. Here the exponents are a half and 2. So here I multiply a half and 2. That gives me 1, which goes back to giving me just x, right? Hey, but there is another thing, that when I square it, becomes just the original number again. Complete. Square root x equals x to the power of, well, just to show you, we already discussed that this is just x, right? And now I show you that this is also x. If this results in x and this results in x, that means that those two things must be the same, right? Then just erase the square on both sides. Apparently, the root of x is same as x to the power of a half. That's weird, right? It's a rule that you sometimes have to use though. We call this a so-called fractional exponent, een gebroken exponent. Het woord gebroken zit het woord breuk in. Dat betekent dat er een breuk in de exponent staat. And we can use that in multiple different ways. Let's first take a look at how the book discusses this. So they show you this and then say, well, root a apparently is the same as a to the power of a half. You can now use this rule, for example, to write x to the power of 3 root x as a power of x. And here, sometimes they want you to now write this as a power with a fraction in it. X to the power of 3 root x is the same as x to the power of 3 times x to the power of a half. I just showed you those are the same. And here I can add the indices, the exponents we call them in version 12. So power of 3 plus a half is x to the power of 3.5. The same way we can write that with numbers. We can write 81 root 3 as a power of 3, because 81 can be written as 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, otherwise known as 3 to the power of 4, times root 3 is 3 to the power of a half. Add the indices. I again say indices, I of course mean exponents. 3 to the power of 4.5. In some simplifications, you have a fractional exponent and also a negative exponent. That means you use both root a equals a to the power of a half, and this is a rule that we discussed in chapter 1, 1 divided by a to the power of p is the same as a to the power of minus p. So 1 divided by the root of x is the same as 1 divided by the x to the power of a half, and that's the same as x to the power of minus a half. A half root 2, a half can be written as 2 to the power of minus 1, times the root of 2 can be written as 2 to the power of a half. Add the exponents gives me 2 to the power of minus a half. This is weird, right? Let's practice it a bit more. Write as a power of x. So x squared root x to the power of 5. X squared I'm happy with, that's already a power of 5. So we have to take a look at the root of x to the power of 5. And remember, previous, let's say like this, previous theories discussed that if you take a root of a power, that's the same as dividing that root in 2, right? So I can immediately write it. Well, they now first do this intermediate step. which is okay, right? They say the root of a is the same as a to the power of a half. So here it's the same as saying x to the power of 5 to the power of a half. If you take a look at the previous lesson, you could also say that root x to the power of 5, you divide the exponent by 2, gives me immediately x to the power of 2.5. This way also works, right? And now if I have this, power to the power is 5 to the power of a half, gives me 2.5, right? So what I'm talking about, let's write it down because maybe it can be a bit unclear. Previously, we said, well, if I had something like this, it became this. The same way you can also do is, well, I divide the exponent by 2. Here I can immediately divide the exponent by 2, giving me x to the power of 2.5. Here they use this intermediate step so they can use this rule, which is totally fine. Right, this is using theory A from this chapter, from this paragraph. X squared times x to the power of 2.5 is now just adding the exponents, giving me x to the power of 4.5. Here, I think I first want to convert x root x to something to the power of x. Remember, root x is just x to the power of a half. X times x to the power of a half. Here you can say there's a 1. So x to the power of 1 times x to the power of a half is actually x to the power of 1.5. And now use this rule. 1 divided by a to the power of p is the same as a to the power of min p. Here I have here I have x to the power of 1.5. So now it becomes x to the power of minus 1.5. And that is writing as a power of x. And that's what they want you to do here. Okay, so you have to get used to those new rules for a bit, and be wary of what they ask you to do, because sometimes they ask you different things in different exercises. They can also do this without letters. Let's take a look at that as well. Write as a power of 2, 3, or 10. 1/4 times the root of 2. Well, I think here it's most logical to write as a power of 2. Let's start with 1/4. How can I rewrite it to a power of 2? The book immediately says do it like this. That's 1 divided by 2 to the power of 2. Right? Remember, I want this 4 to become a power of 2. Or 3 or 10, but I think that's not possible here. So that's why we use the power of 2. By rewriting it like this first, I can then use this rule to convert it to a regular 2 to the power of something. Just watch in a moment. Here, root 2 becomes 2 to the power of a half, right? They use this rule here. Now, this 1 divided by 2 to the power of 2 looks a lot like this. So I can rewrite it to 2 to the power of minus 2. That's what I do right here. And then 2 to the power of minus 2 times 2 to the power of a half. We have to do minus 2 plus a half gives me 2 to the power of minus 1.5. And that is written as a power of 2. So we're done here. Well, for B, we have to choose for the power of 2, 3, or 10. I see a lot of zeros. I see a 10, I see 100. I think I'm going to use the power of 10 here. How am I going to do that? Well, convert the numbers above and below first to something to a power of 10. I can rewrite 10 or 100 to 10 to the power of 2. Right? 10 times 10 is 100. And I can do this here, or rewrite this to 10 to the power of a half. That is this rule right here. And now you have to remember this rule from chapter 1. If I divide two powers, I subtract the exponents. So 10 squared divided by 10 to the power of a half, I subtract 2.5, giving me 10 to the power of 1.5. I showed you this because the book doesn't really explain this, and for some of you this might be quite a while ago. The chapter was also quite difficult, so that's why I showed it. And also know that those rules are coming to come back, right? Well, I already used the power of 2. I used the power of 10. Maybe this has to be the power of 3, right? It's not always the case. Here it is. And we have to take a look at this weird root here. I think this can be rewritten as 3 to the power of something. Which power? 3 to the power of 2 is 9. 3 to the power of 3 is 27. 3 to the power of 4 is this times 3. It's 81. And if I do it times 3 again, I have 243. So this root can be written as 1 divided by the root of 3 to the power of 5. I have a root of a power, so what I can do here is again write it in this form if you want to. A root means to the power of a half, and then if you have this part, you can say a power to a power, so do 5 times a half, you find 3 to the power of 2.5. You could immediately do this as well. Taking the root of a power means dividing the power in 2, which immediately gives me 3 to the power of 2.5, which they have right here. Can use this intermediate step, don't have to. And yeah, here the final answer is already given. Spoiler, because I have 1 divided by that, I have to use this rule to the left. It's the same as that power, but then with a negative sign in the exponents. Practice, practice, practice. Remember the rules. If you find it difficult to remember the rules, write them down in your notebook first, next to the exercises that you are going to do. Okay? If you find this difficult, feel free to ask questions online and I will try to help you. Good luck.